Hey everyone, welcome to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. Hope everyone's doing well today. Today we're going to talk about Dominick Cicale and some breaking news that I think folks will find interesting. And before we get started, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. I've noticed that Dominick Cicale hadn't been doing much on YouTube lately, and I think I know the reason that he hasn't been on. And so I was doing some research over the weekend, and I uncovered an interesting lawsuit that Dominick Cicale filed on May 17th. And this lawsuit is against his partners at EG Vodka. And besides the partners, it also include an employee named James Fitzgerald. EG Vodka, as most of you know, is a company that Dominick Cicale's been with for, a few years now. It's also the sponsor of his show. And also, we know about there was a lawsuit that EG Vodka actually filed against Bill Staxx of Chatting with Staxx show. And so, my understanding, from looking at the documentation, is that EG Vodka got a default judgment against Staxx. Anyway, because of that, and also he was actually sued because Staxx had made some allegations against the founders of EG Vodka, but also went on to, say some stuff that, according to the lawsuit, wasn't true about EG Vodka. And so he was sued for slander. So anyway, EG Vodka, it's a craft vodka. If you've tasted Tito's, or it's something similar to that. But it's a premium vodka. It's beaten Grey Goose vodka, for example, in blind taste tests 4 out of every 5 times. EG Vodka itself had 6 partners until early May, when one of the partners resigned. So now it has 5 partners. 2 of the partners had previously been involved in a criminal indictment, and it was a federal indictment involving conspiracy, kickbacks, and bribes. And we'll discuss that a little later. Each of the partners had invested seed money into EG Vodka, and so each of the partners own 1/6 of the company. Just so you guys know who the owners are, you've got Dominick Cicale, Martin Kreitis, Thomas Malik. So Martin and Thomas were the ones that were involved in the criminal indictment in 2022, which we're going to talk about. And then you have a Tony Wright out of St. Cloud, Florida, a Robert Doolin out of Largo, Florida, and previously you had a partner named David Rocco, but he's the one that resigned. And then there's an employee that's listed in the lawsuit named James Fitzgerald. So his role was more of an industry person in the spirit industry. What you do is you'll sell product in liquor stores and so forth, and so that's usually done through a distributor. But then you also want to get the vodka into restaurants, bars, and establishments. James Fitzgerald's role was actually, as a sales manager, salesperson, to get EG Vodka into the bars and restaurants. Dominick filed this lawsuit in the 18th Judicial Circuit Court in Seminole County, Florida. The complaint's 235 pages. I've reviewed the filing, plus the federal indictments against Martin and Thomas. These allegations in the lawsuit are very serious, and it's most likely going to lead to a corresponding federal criminal complaint due to the activities. And the most serious allegations involve theft and wire fraud, which could be considered embezzlement and money laundering. And this current case is a civil case, so any criminal charges would be in a separate federal indictment. And I do want to point out that Dominick is not accused of any wrongdoing. Dominick, in fact, is the victim in this case. I want to talk about the actual allegations in the lawsuit against the partners of EG Vodka. Like I said, 235 pages. So we're not going to go through everything in detail, but I do want to highlight what I consider the most damning allegations, and the allegations that, if proven, could lead to people going to jail. To me, the biggest issue, or the biggest complaint, is involving a transfer of $120,000 from EG Vodka to another business named RX. This was done without any legitimate business reason. RX is a pharmaceutical business, and that's the same business that was under federal investigation in 2022. This money was wired from EG Vodka to RX, and this wasn't done with proper authorization. And so Dominick and certain other people weren't aware of the $120,000. RX doesn't have any sort of legitimate business reason to be partnered with EG Vodka. Why was $120,000 wired? Also, there's a total of about $195,000 in expenses that aren't accounted for or were not authorized by the folks that are in this partnership. Some of the other issues that you see involves a guy named James Fitzgerald. James Fitzgerald has been accused of submitting fraudulent expense claims. So, like I said, he's been going on the road. He's supposed to be generating business for EG Vodka, getting the vodka into the bars and restaurants. And so he submitted fraudulent claims for reimbursement, including falsified hotel bills and receipts. For example, he had stayed supposedly at the Courtyard by Marriott in Naples, Florida. The Courtyard was actually contacted. They said there was no guest named Fitzgerald that had stayed during the dates indicated on the invoice. And so there were similar confirmations that were received from other hotels pointing to clear instances of fraud. And then at the same time, you had receipts for restaurants and gas stations located over 100 miles away from the purported hotels where these expenses were submitting. Fitzgerald also received triple recovery for his automobile expenses. It's been alleged that this guy Fitzgerald was consuming alcohol on company time and, basically would then drive to the next location. And so, this was posing significant liability risk for the company. And so when this was brought up to the other partners, what Fitzgerald was doing, the partners said, yeah, that we won't continue to employ Fitzgerald. We won't pay for those receipts, but they went ahead and kept him on as an employee. And they also went ahead and paid this guy's receipts, even though they were fraudulent. You have a lot of money that's going out of EG Vodka that's not being accounted for. So as we go on with the complaints, there was also allegations of an improper cash call and misuse of funds. Last year in the summer of 2023, there was a vote with the board, with the 6 partners, and basically it would require that each of the members would contribute another $50,000 to EG Vodka for its growth. And so each of the partners gave the $50,000. So instead of the money being used for the growth of EG Vodka, it was used actually to buy inventory of a champagne. So basically the problem is that you had an agreement on where the funds would go, and it ended up not being used properly. You have money going in and out that's being done without each of the board members knowing what's happening. And, the biggest problem is that you got this $120,000 wire transfer that went from EG Vodka to, this RX company that, wasn't approved by the board. The only other thing I wanted to mention is, these partners. So let's go over the actual 2022 case involving Thomas Malik and Martin Kritis, because this company RX, where the $120,000 was sent to, is the same company that was involved in this criminal indictment in 2022. For everyone to know, what's kind of interesting to me is that even though there's a lot of damning evidence in the 2022 case, the prosecutor just dropped the case, earlier this year, not sure why. Anyway, the indictment charges that Thomas Malik and Martin Kritis had conspiracy to commit offenses against the U.S., specifically soliciting, receiving illegal kickbacks and bribes. You had a kickback scheme with Malik and Critus, where those involved in a conspiracy to solicit and receive illegal kickbacks from a California-based wholesale drug supplier. And so this conspiracy began allegedly in 2012 and continued through March of 2017. And Malik and Critus would solicit this business to pay a kickback of 10% of the total cost of the drugs ordered by RxD's healthcare provider clients. And then in return for the kickbacks, they would continue to do business with this company. What we also said that this business that in California would send monthly kickback payments to Malik and Critus. Both defendants were engaged in various acts to conceal the kickback scheme, including directing the California business on how to issue and deliver the kickback payments. Malik and Critus used their respective companies to receive and disguise the illegal payment. In the end, what's interesting is that the government just dropped the case. So, to me, that's very rare. You don't really see that happen that often. I mean, usually, you'll see at least some sort of statement of the reason, but it just quietly got dropped. And I know that by looking at Thomas Malik and Martin Critus, they have some relationship with politicians. And so, I'm not saying this is a case, but maybe their connections is why they got the case dismissed. But when you see what happened in 2022 and now coming to the present, where money is getting wired from EG Vodka to this RX development company without any permission, it really reeks of either money laundering, theft. It's there is no legitimate reason for that happening. It's interesting to me that these two partners would engage in such behavior because they know who Dominick Cicale is. And so, Dominick obviously was involved in that life. He's not anymore because he became an informant. And so I'm sure Dominick still has relationships with the feds. For these guys to, do such blatant illegal acts, if it's true, it's just really speaks heavily of what these guys are doing. And so, I have personal experiences with South Florida. I actually was involved with a company called Americore. I was brought in as a consultant. My role was to help this company, Americore, build their business buying hospitals. Basically, they would buy rural hospitals, and they made their money through getting Medicaid and Medicare payments. And because they were a rural hospital, the amount that the government would reimburse wasn't capped like a regular hospital. What ended up happening was that these guys would buy the hospitals, and then the money just wasn't used to pay employees. You have employees, nurses, and doctors not getting paid. And in the end, the government ended up having to take over these hospitals, and no one knew where the money went to. But the company that I was involved with lost $1.5 million. Fortunately for me as an independent consultant, I got paid because I was a subcontractor. I wasn't directly employed by Americore, but Americore was the same company that the FBI and feds are looking at today that Jim Biden was involved in. It seems like that South Florida is just a cesspool of illegal activities. What does this mean for Dominick Cicale, moving forward? It's obvious that he got engaged with partners that weren't on the up and up. I don't think that Dominick knew that these guys were involved in illegal activities, because when he got involved with EG Vodka, this was before the federal indictments. But, it's obvious now that, these guys are, doing some shady shit. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And also, what does this mean for, Bill Staxx? Staxx has a judgment against him because of this, this lawsuit. maybe what Staxx was saying, there's a bit of truth in it now. We'll cover this story. I know for a lot of people, the legal stuff is kind of boring, but, I think it is important to bring this up because it does involve, someone that's got a name here in this mob genre and is also a sponsor of his show. So I just feel it's really relevant. Anyway, just wanted to let you guys know what I uncovered. I have information from the Florida Secretary of State on all of the partners. I tried reaching out to them over the weekend. They never returned my calls. Also, I'm trying to get a hold of the prosecutor for the 2022 case because I want to understand why that federal indictments got dropped. We'll just continue to keep track of what's going on, and any future developments, I'll let you know. So anyway, thank you for watching today's show. Like I said, I look forward to seeing your comments. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and we will talk with you soon.